to be the mayor. When he got it, he gave it to somebody else. So there's a lot of credit that we never got for doing the job. But there's a bank fair, first-time home buying program was all done through the Acorn organization because that's what people believed in. Now, Dale's got a book out telling you this is the real world. And maybe this is what we have to pay attention to. Oh, thank you.
And the only thing I would disagree with you about, Don, is I do think, and this is what I've relearned in the rebuilding of New Orleans, is that when I first started as an organizer with Welfare Rights, you had 2 cents, to rub together. So you talked people into working as organizers who were vistas, who were this, who were that, who were secretaries and lawyers and whatever, and you got people to put in time. You were building a volunteer army, and when you went to your members and said, we don't have any money and this is what it took, there were weeks I still talk to, when I run into Gary Delgado, there's not a time he doesn't remind me of when he got 18, we both were paid $18 one week, $23, and glad to get it, because and then finally they said, how did you come up with the dues program? Well, who did we have to go to ask for money other than our members? Well, I wasn't a New York guy. I wasn't somebody who, we didn't know about writing proposals and stuff. I almost never had to write a proposal the first 10 years we worked at Acorn. That didn't mean I never raised any money. But I would say, well, is that your job? You came all the way down here. You can't figure out whether to give us money. Why are you asking me to somehow, that I'm going to be able to do a better job than you at selling your board? You either sell us the board and give us money, or, so this is why we took me out of the fundraising business. But the truth is, and I'm relearning that again in New Orleans, where we saw thousands of volunteers come in and help us do this program. And to this day, last week, spring break, the New Orleans, whatever they call them, community voicers were out there with 40 volunteers one day, 15 another day, and whatever, out there in the lower Ninth Ward again. And on the international level, I don't have it. The way we're working with dues, it's 3 soles a month here and 10 pesos a month there, and a couple of this and a couple of that. There's no way we're going to pay somebody to do research. And you get people to volunteer, and they like it, and we like it, and it's a good thing. So, I almost worry the other way. I was talking to Mary Ellen, obviously, the last days, and she would say, God, I only have this blankety-blank figure. And I'm saying, that is so much money. What are you saying, that you don't have enough money? Look at the amount of money you just told me you had. I was here 2 years ago, and you were on unemployment and didn't have a check, and now you've got over $100,000, and you're saying you don't have any money? You ought to be able to build, God's own pleasure palace here in Pittsburgh for an organization. Because we got to look at this resource differently. We got to go back old school, I think. Yes, ma'am.
Thinking about the future, there's been a lot of community formations after Acorn went under, and they seem to be reinventing, the community organization, but with a lot of foundation from Acorn. Do you see this happening around the country? I see it in some cities, New York, and different places, Philadelphia. What's your sense of that? How's that going?
The rebuilding?
Yeah, the rebuilding, the different organizations coming up out from Acorn.
Well, certainly we have to hope that's very successful. And I think so far the ones that have been successful, unfortunately, are the places where there are other resources. So there were 38 states at that organization when I left in 2008. I think, what's the number you would say has really a viable 10, 9, 8?
12.
12. But on a good day, some of those, have belts tightened right down to the backbone. Those are. I go to Arkansas regularly, and as I say, I know the Louisiana operation pretty well. And there's good days and bad. But I think New York is probably doing well. It's not about a third of the. But let's be honest. New York's by what they say in the organization and the numbers, a third of the size it was maybe in 2008. I don't know about California or whatever, so this is still a rebuilding project. But we have to be hopeful, and I think other organizations, and this is where we are trying to step into that void that was created when Acorn went down. And that's part of why, when I was answering your question, I worry about some of what they've taken away, to whether or not their relationship with funders has become more circumspect, which is what it should if you watch what happened to Acorn, or whether or not they're, you know, towing a closer line to where that money comes from, or whether or not they're willing to do some of what's necessary to do in terms of voter work and you know, the fights that have to be damaged. But I think that's why we have to take comfort in things like Occupy, that it's created at least for a brief time, it created a movement on the left which did fill some of the space that Acorn was filling, and therefore allows community organizations that need time to build deeper roots, take some pressure off of them right now. And I think the problem is that Occupy is a classic organizing example of a tactic devouring a strategy right now. So how many of them really can survive and still be part of the conversation, I think, is problematic. Mr. Good News here. Mr. Debbie Downer. But questions on this side of the room?
You were talking earlier about labor and unions going into community organizing part. Are you reserving judgment if this is a good strategy, or if you think it's going to work?
No, if I had better sense, I'd reserve judgment. But never having good sense, no. I mean, here's the thing I worry about. Fight for Philadelphia. If you're going to be SEIU, and you're going to do a partnership and build a community labor alliance in Philadelphia, in my view, you would reach out and build that alliance with Action United, or organizations with deep commitments and skill and resources in the community. The notion that in SEIU's case and in many others, they're building their own sort of nonprofit community grass tips organizations, you know, I would never say this, you know, in sort of like Fox News terms, but there's very little difference between what we see them doing in that way and what we're seeing labor doing. And I thought that was exactly the opposite, particularly of an institution like SEIU. I spent 25 years in SEIU. I was on the international board for 8 years, ran campaigns for them, blah, blah, blah. They should know better, but that's not what they're doing. You know, I had a, you know, but there are 8 or 9 of those groups that have been set up in that way, as C4s or whatever is the common way that they're setting up, or in some cases they're running through other organizations like Pittsburgh United or whatever. I'm very worried about that tendency, because that's not a partnership. That's not even transactional. Transactional, at least in the organization, maybe make a couple bucks, you know, pay rent or something. That's just transitory. That's just, you know, another stop as the bus goes by and they happen to wave out the window as they came through. That's not a community labor coalition, and that's what we need. I think the potential powerful nature of community labor coalitions, as both community organizations are building, as labor unions are weakened to the degree they might be willing to look at different paradigms, that's exciting. But it's not exciting if all of a sudden you think, you know, there's a shortcut. I can take a shortcut here, and I can give a couple of grand here, and I can do a little of that, and I can throw, you know, because that's the idea. No labor union doesn't have more lawyers than they have organizers, so they can always create these structures. But that's not organizing.
So organized with their
Say what? Whatever you were saying, I was bound to be right. I just couldn't hear it.
I have so many lawyers. So every day, has it gone through legal yet? Has it gone through legal yet?
That statement goes through legal right there.
Oh, we can't do that because it hasn't gone through legal yet.
Well, you know, and legal is so close to the basic, you know, alimentary canal that you don't even want to know what comes out of legal.
I don't even think I passed it.
Thank God only 2 or 3 of you got that joke, because that was inappropriate. That was inappropriate for this setting in a fine city like Philadelphia. But
Did it not pass through legal? Okay, then we're going to do it. That's my motto.
There is an organization that has just begun by the name of Power. That organization is right at the bottom you know, they need to learn. I'll
Mhm.
say that. When it started, it was